Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named The X-Files, Season 6, Part 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins with a lab worker who has been studying the black oil virus and begins to feel unbearably cold. He cranks his home's thermostat to the max but still can't stop shivering. Soon he begins to mutate, his skin turning into a translucent jelly. It's clear the lab worker was accidentally infected. The next day, a colleague visits and finds the lab worker dead on the couch in a gruesome scene. The virus inside him had fully developed into an alien creature which burst from his body and also killed the unlucky visitor. Meanwhile, the smoking man has burned all the X-Files records. As a result, both Mulder and Scully are reassigned from the X-Files division. Mulder tries to convince the panel of his experience in Canada, but lacking any physical evidence, and with Scully having no memory of the events due to her abduction, his plea is dismissed. To them, Mulder seems like a delusional clown, and his request to return to the X-Files is unanimously rejected. The secret organization called the Syndicate is quickly alerted to the lab worker's infection. To cover up the truth, the smoking man publicly claims the lab worker was killed by a deranged Native American. The real concern, however, is that the alien creature has escaped. If it's spotted, the entire conspiracy could be exposed. The smoking man brings the special boy to the area. The boy, who recently underwent brain surgery, is not only telepathic, but can also psychically link with alien life forms. However, the boy tells them the creature isn't nearby. Meanwhile, Skinner, still sympathetic to Mulder, secretly hands him the lab worker's case report. Unfortunately, the X-Files division is now run by Agent Spender and Mulder's ex, Diana. Diana's betrayal cuts deep into his muscles. Mulder, determined to find proof of alien existence so he can reclaim the X-Files, takes Scully to the lab worker's house. The place is covered in blood, with claw marks carved deep into the walls and floors. Mulder finds a fragment of the creature's claw and quickly concludes that the black oil virus inside the lab worker evolved into an alien being that tore itself out of him. Scully is skeptical of such an outlandish theory. Elsewhere, at the Rolling Hills nuclear power plant, workers discover a problem with the cooling system and go to inspect the reactor. One technician spots something strange in the pipes and is attacked and killed by the alien creature, which had apparently made its way there to hide. The FBI responds quickly and seals off the plant. Mulder and Scully attempt to gain access but are blocked by Spender and Diana. Since Mulder lacks clearance, the pair leave, only to spot the boy hiding in their car. Concerned for the boy's health, Scully takes him to a motel. The boy confesses he no longer wants to help the smoking man and had chosen to seek refuge with Scully. She believes the boy's unique DNA might help validate Mulder's theory, so they plan to take him to a hospital. Meanwhile, Diana approaches Mulder and offers to take him inside the nuclear plant, claiming the creature is hiding there. Mulder follows her into the facility, where she reveals the technician's body had already been removed. Mulder theorizes the alien needs extreme heat to grow and reproduce. Inside, he finds traces of the creature, slimy residue and part of its shed skin. Scully brought the boy to the hospital, aware that she wanted to test his DNA to see if there was a connection to the alien creature. The boy sensed he was being used and felt deeply hurt, leaving Scully filled with guilt. The results came back quickly. Alien virus DNA was detected in his bloodstream. Scully was stunned, but before she could process it fully, she realized the boy had disappeared. It turned out that the smoking man's agents had taken the boy to the nuclear plant, hoping he could help locate the creature. The boy led them to a utility room near a pool of water. Meanwhile, Mulder was locked outside, banging desperately on the door. Suddenly, the alien creature emerged and killed the agents. As Mulder continued pounding on the door, FBI agents arrived in response to the alert. Diana pulled a gun on Mulder at the scene, but the boy was nowhere to be found. As a result of the incident, both Mulder and Scully were formally reprimanded and permanently barred from any further involvement with the X-Files. Their actions even led to Skinner losing his position as deputy director, which was quickly filled by a new appointee. The smoking man praised his son Spender for a job well done. It turned out Mulder's downfall had been orchestrated by Spender, and the smoking man hinted that if Mulder continued digging, Spender should consider eliminating him. Scully believed Diana had also betrayed Mulder, but Mulder thought Diana's actions were intended to protect the X-Files from being shut down. In other words, while Scully saw Diana as manipulative and untrustworthy, Mulder believed at the very least Diana shared his belief in alien life, unlike Scully, who still harbored doubt. Scully then showed Mulder the boy's test results. His DNA was a perfect partial match with both the alien creature's claw and the black oil virus, specifically a segment of what's known as junk DNA, a dormant remnant found in every human. In the boy, this DNA had somehow been activated. In essence, the boy was part alien, which also suggested that all humans carry the same hidden genetic material. So, where had the boy gone? In the final scene, the boy is shown in the plant's utility room, staring into the pool. The alien creature, which had been hiding at the bottom, sheds its skin once again under the intense heat, marking another stage in its evolution. The alien creature didn't harm the boy because they shared the same active DNA, revealing that they were essentially the same species. This explained why the boy could mentally connect with the alien. The implication is that every human carries this latent DNA, just not activated. The scene shifts to a breaking news alert. A stolen blue car is speeding down the highway at 90 mph and accelerating. Several police cruisers are in hot pursuit. The driver is a man in a pink shirt, and he shows no intention of stopping. In the back seat lies a woman, clutching her head and crying out in pain. The police finally manage to stop the car with a roadblock. They yank the driver out and pin him to the ground while helping the woman into a squad car. The man keeps struggling and yelling her name. Meanwhile, her pain worsens. She suddenly starts slamming her head against the car window, and then, in a horrific twist, her head explodes into onion pieces. Everyone on the scene is left in total shock. Cut to Mulder and Scully. Not only had they been reassigned from the X-Files unit, but their new boss was now handing them pointless busy work, like going door to door inspecting fertilizer. While on one of these house calls, Mulder caught the breaking news story on TV, the high-speed chase from earlier, and his curiosity was instantly piqued. He convinced Scully to travel with him to Nevada to check it out. The driver turned out to be a 40-year-old handyman. The woman whose head had exploded was his wife. He refused to explain why he'd stolen a car and gone on the run with her. Scully handled the autopsy and found a wound inside the right ear canal. As the coroner put it, it was as if a small explosive had gone off inside her skull. But midway through the autopsy, blood suddenly gushed from the wound. Cut to the jail, where the driver suddenly began suffering a nosebleed. He banged on the bars for help and soon showed signs of severe head pain and then collapsed. Oddly enough, once he was loaded into an ambulance, his condition started to improve. Mulder followed in his car, but just then, the driver regained consciousness, overpowered the escort, stole his gun, and hijacked the ambulance, then took Mulder hostage. Meanwhile, Scully received word that a second victim, a man, had been found nearby, dead under identical circumstances. She began to suspect an unknown infectious disease and immediately quarantined herself and the medical examiner. Fearing the driver might be infected as well, she phoned Mulder and urged him to isolate the man as soon as possible. Easier said than done. The driver used Mulder as a bargaining chip, threatening to kill him if the police kept following. He even smashed Mulder's phone. When they hit a red light, Mulder had no choice but to slow down and stop. But the moment the car came to a halt, the driver's head pain returned in full force. As he teetered on the edge of unconsciousness, Mulder ran the red light to keep him alive. Mulder asked him directly what was causing the pain. The driver said he had no idea, but he was convinced it was the government's fault. Knowing there was a police blockade ahead and stopping might trigger another fatal episode, Mulder swerved off the main road and took a detour to bypass the roadblock. But the driver, instead of being grateful, only seethed with more rage. He hated the U.S. government and everyone who worked for it, including Mulder. His condition worsened. As the car kept moving, something strange happened. It veered slightly off course, and the driver's pain spiked again. Mulder realized they needed to head west and keep moving. Any stop or change in direction could be deadly. After Mulder pulled him back from the brink twice, the driver finally opened up. That morning, around 6 a.m., his wife was making breakfast like usual when she suddenly started bleeding from her nose. 15 minutes later, she developed a splitting headache. In a panic, he rushed her to the hospital and discovered the faster he drove, the more her symptoms eased. That's what led to the highway chase. Scully got a call from her new boss, Kirsch, who had replaced Skinner. He had already been briefed on Mulder's situation. Rather than reprimand them, he notified the local field office to support Scully's investigation. The second victim had been a meter reader and had collapsed not far from the couple's home. Scully suited up in full protective gear and headed to the neighborhood to investigate. She found a dog at the victim's residence, and disturbingly, the dog was now showing the same symptoms. As she prepared to draw blood for testing, the dog's head suddenly exploded, just like the woman's. Dogs, housewives, men, this mysterious affliction didn't discriminate by gender or even species. Then Scully noticed a nearby house with lights on. The resident, a deaf and mute elderly woman, was the only survivor in the area. Her pet bird had also died of the same condition. Back with Mulder, he realized the car was nearly out of gas. With no cash on him, the gas station attendant refused to activate the pump. So Mulder stole the man's car and drove off with the driver, leaving behind a handwritten note for Scully. Everyone in the area, human and animal alike, was dead. Only the deaf woman had survived. Scully suddenly put the pieces together. The cause wasn't a pathogen, it was a sound. Just then, Scully got a call. Local police had arrived at the gas station and found the note Mulder had left behind. In it, he begged them not to set up any more roadblocks. He needed an open road. Scully noticed the highway was littered with dead birds. Following the trail of carcasses, she traced the source, a ground-based wireless transmission system set up by the Department of Defense. She rushed there and confirmed it had been activated that morning, right around the time the driver's wife first developed symptoms. Now, the driver was deteriorating fast. His only chance was to keep speeding west. He begged Mulder to help him survive, to get justice from whoever was responsible. Mulder encouraged him to hang in there, to live long enough to make them pay. But there was one problem. The Pacific Ocean was just up ahead, and Mulder was running out of road. At that moment, the local police delivered a phone to Mulder while he was still driving. On the line, Scully shared a plan with him. She would take a private jet to the western edge of the highway, and the moment Mulder stopped the car, she would insert a syringe into the driver's ear to relieve the pressure in his inner ear. It could cause permanent hearing loss, but at that point, survival was the only priority, and the driver was well past caring about the consequences. Scully speculated that the sonic frequency might be resonating with the human skull, constantly increasing inner ear pressure. The motion of the car seemed to help relieve this pressure, but that still didn't explain why they had to keep heading west. Regardless, the plan was underway. Scully arrived at the end of the road, syringe in hand. But just as she moved to treat the driver, she discovered he was already dead. After all their efforts, they still couldn't save him. Mulder said nothing. He simply walked alone toward the ocean, overwhelmed with sorrow. The case wrapped up, and Mulder and Scully returned to FBI headquarters. Their unauthorized mission had caused thousands of dollars in damages. Scully, however, said she wouldn't apologize because their actions had forced the Department of Defense to shut down the local transmission system, likely saving many lives. Kirsch told Scully that the Department of Defense had never admitted any connection to the deaths, and the system shutdown was merely a coincidence. Surprisingly, he didn't punish them. In fact, he subtly acknowledged that their actions had saved a group of campers who were headed into the danger zone. Still, he reminded them of one hard truth. They would never return to the X-Files. Even after saving lives, they were still stuck inspecting fertilizer. The scene shifts to wreckage floating in the sea and a man lying face down in the water. It's Mulder. He's rescued by a passing ship, but the crew isn't what you'd expect. Dressed like soldiers, they drag him aboard, cursing him out in English and accusing him of being a German. Mulder shows his FBI badge, but none of them have even heard of the FBI. They take him to the captain's quarters, and the captain slaps him twice across the face, asking if he is a spy. Mulder insists he isn't. He realizes that they're currently 60 miles southwest of Bermuda and that the ship has gone completely off course. According to him, they've entered the Bermuda Triangle. He tells the captain that the ship is the Queen Anne, launched in 1939, but somehow it's been pulled into a time vortex and landed in 1998. The captain, however, insists it's still 1939, in the midst of a world war. Just then, an officer rushes in and reports that the ship has been overtaken by Germans. The captain leaves to respond to the crisis. Meanwhile, Mulder, locked in a cabin, tries to send a distress signal by radio, only to pick up a broadcast announcing war between Britain and Germany. Turns out it's not the ship that traveled to 1998. It's Mulder who's been thrown back into 1939. Suddenly, someone opens the cabin door. Mulder knocks the man out and is stunned to see the face of his colleague Spender. He swaps clothes with the unconscious man and dons the German military uniform. The ship has already been seized by German forces who are now hunting down British soldiers. Mulder, in disguise, enters the ballroom and runs straight into the 1939 version of Scully. She sees his German uniform and instantly recoils, telling him to get his filthy Nazi hands off her. Before Mulder can respond, more German soldiers burst into the ballroom and arrest him for impersonating a German officer. Leading the arrest is none other than Alex. Mulder was dragged into the ship's bridge, where a German officer was threatening the British captain, demanding he change course and steer the ship to Germany. When the captain refused, the officer immediately shot and killed him. Mulder took a good look at the German. Turns out it was the smoking man. The smoking man questioned Mulder, asking where the British weapons were stored. Losing patience, the smoking man ordered Mulder's execution. Just then, another German officer arrived. This one looked exactly like Skinner. He presented Mulder's FBI badge, which clearly identified him as an American. Since the U.S. was still neutral in 1939, the smoking man decided to imprison Mulder instead of killing him. Cut to the present day. The three lone gunmen tracked down Scully to inform her that Mulder had gone missing. They had spotted the long-lost Queen Anne, which disappeared in 1939, on satellite imagery from the National Reconnaissance Office. Somehow the cruise ship had reappeared at 6 a.m. that morning in the Bermuda Triangle. Mulder, unable to resist the mystery, had rented a speedboat and gone out to investigate, but vanished from radar after sailing into a storm. Scully sought help from Skinner, but since he was no longer their direct superior, there wasn't much he could do. She then went to the office of Kirsch, only to find him meeting with the smoking man, who appeared to be part of the secret organization. Scully left immediately and turned to Spender for help, only to be betrayed as he promptly reported her actions to his superiors. Fortunately, Skinner still had a conscience. Risking his pension, he secretly secured surveillance footage from the Navy for Scully. Grateful, Scully teamed up with the lone gunman, and the four of them set off for Bermuda. There, through the heavy fog, the long-lost Queen Anne suddenly appeared, its lights still on. The team boarded the ghost ship without hesitation. Back in 1939, Mulder was thrown into the ship's lower deck. A British prisoner nearby told him that the Germans had spared his life only because they didn't want to provoke the United States into joining the war. Mulder gave a wry smile and warned them of Pearl Harbor. The British man told Mulder he had overheard the Germans intercepting a secret message, which claimed there was a bomb on board named Thor's Hammer. But Mulder didn't think it referred to a literal bomb. He believed it was the nickname for a person, someone capable of building such a bomb. In other words, there was an important scientist hidden among the passengers. When the British man heard this theory, he immediately ran off to report it to the Germans. A crewman, who looked suspiciously like Kirsch, tried to start the engine and sail back to Jamaica, but with no compass, there was no way to navigate. The crew began arguing. Some wanted to head for Britain, others for Germany. But Mulder insisted they had to turn the ship around. If they didn't, no one was going anywhere. Chaos broke out on the lower deck. The German soldiers dragged Mulder back to the ballroom. The smoking man, now informed that Mulder had deciphered the meaning of Thor's hammer, demanded to know the scientist's identity. Mulder looked genuinely clueless. In response, the smoking man began executing civilians one by one. After 2 people were killed, the 1939 version of Scully could no longer stay silent. The Germans took her hostage, hoping to force Mulder to talk. Mulder desperately wanted to protect her, but he truly had no idea who the scientist was. Just when it seemed they were both about to be shot, the real scientist stepped forward. As it turned out, 1939 Scully was a spy, tasked with protecting him. The Germans seized the scientist and prepared to execute both Mulder and Scully. But suddenly, the ship's engine caught fire. A handful of British soldiers stormed the ballroom and engaged the Germans in close combat. The guests, seeing the chaos, jumped into the fight as well. Amid upbeat ballroom music, a wild brawl erupted on the dance floor. Mulder and 1939 Scully crawled away through the crowd. Cut back to the present. Scully and the lone gunman were now aboard the ghost ship, searching for Mulder. Though they were in the same physical space, they existed in different timelines. While the 1939 version of the ship was engulfed in battle, Scully's side was silent, empty, and covered in cobwebs. In 1939, Mulder and Scully were running through the ship when a German soldier blocked their path. Just as they braced for the worst, Skinner appeared and shot the soldier dead. Turns out he was a deep-cover American agent all along. Knew it, never trust a bald man with earnest eyebrows. The group ran to the end of the corridor. At that very moment, present-day Scully walked by on her end. The 2 Scullys froze, clearly sensing something strange, though they couldn't see each other. Back in the ballroom, the fight continued, but in Scully's timeline, the hall stood eerily still, abandoned for decades. Mulder took 1939 Scully up to the deck and explained the truth. The ship had entered a temporal rift in the Bermuda Triangle. They had to turn the ship around and get the scientists safely back to America. Otherwise, the future would be lost, and Mulder himself might vanish. That scientist is most likely J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, who in 1945 helped create the world's first nuclear weapon. Knowing he would never see 1939 Scully again, Mulder gave her a parting kiss, bold and sudden, then leapt into the ocean below. The scene shifts to a hospital where Mulder wakes up to find Skinner and the lone gunman trio visiting him. He's clearly relieved. Turns out the 1939 Scully really did manage to turn the ship around. Mulder eagerly recounts his wild adventure, but no one believes him. To them, the Queen Anne was just a ghost ship. As the episode closes, Mulder expresses his love out of the blue to Scully, but she brushes it off, still nursing the sore spot left by the 1939 Scully's right hook. Mulder touches his face, smiling like an awkward ant. As for Mulder's bizarre experience, there are two possible explanations. The first is that he truly traveled through time and existed in two timelines with two versions of Scully. That would explain why he suddenly vanished from the radar. But this theory has a flaw. Mulder encounters various people on the ship who look exactly like people from his own time. In real life, there's no way there'd be that many coincidences. The second possibility was that Mulder hallucinated the whole thing while unconscious after being rescued. His mind simply cast familiar faces into new roles. The smoking man as the villain in both timelines, Skinner as the undercover good guy even in Nazi Germany, Spender as the CSM's lackey, and Alex as his usual ruthless self. The scene shifts to Dreamland, a nickname for Area 51, home to an Air Force base surrounded by UFO rumors. It's 11 p.m. Mulder is driving Scully to Area 51. He's received intel from a contact inside the base who claims to have proof of alien spacecraft. Scully, frustrated, complains that Mulder is once again obsessing over UFOs. She's spent countless sleepless nights chasing leads with him, only to end up empty-handed every time. Not long after, they're intercepted by military personnel. A man in black named Morris checks their IDs and warns them that they're approaching a government test site. He orders them to turn back immediately. When he hears they're hunting UFOs, he scoffs and tells them flying saucers don't exist. Just then, a glowing shape appears in the sky. It's triangular, barely visible through the shimmer. Mulder stares in awe, but as it flashes overhead, something unbelievable happens. Morris is now wearing Mulder's t-shirt, standing next to Scully. Meanwhile, Mulder finds himself dressed in a black suit, standing across from them. Scully calls the man beside her Mulder and gets into the car with him. The real Mulder is too stunned to react. By the time he pulls himself together, they're gone. Mulder climbs into a nearby car where two men in black are waiting. They call him Morris and question why he let Scully and the guy in Mulder's clothes go. One of the men tries to smooth things over. They arrive at the base. Mulder clumsily pulls out Morris's ID badge. Security footage shows him with Morris's face. In Morris's office, photos of Morris with high-ranking officials hang on the walls. Mulder finally puts the pieces together. The glowing light swapped their souls. He tries to reach Scully to tell her the truth. Meanwhile, she's with Morris, who's in Mulder's form and acting unusually quiet. She senses something's off. He avoids the topic, asks her to pump gas, and steps out of the car. Her phone rings. It's the real Mulder, but he panics when his co-workers appear and hangs up. Morris asks Scully to buy him a pack of cigarettes. She finds it odd. Mulder doesn't smoke. Even stranger, Morris calls her Dana, but the real Mulder always calls her Scully. Back at the base, Mulder learns there's been a security breach and that someone inside is leaking classified information. His co-workers insist the mole must be found. Then a call comes in, from Morris's wife. Mulder awkwardly answers, pretending to be her husband, only to be subjected to a long rant. His colleague kindly drops him off at Morris's home. The wife is already asleep like a pig. Mulder spends the night alone on the couch watching Daniel's CCTV series. Meanwhile, a secret Air Force aircraft crashed near Area 51. The general rushed to the scene with his team. Both pilots survived, but not without complications. Somehow, the co-pilot had fused into a large rock, his body partially embedded in the stone. The pilot, on the other hand, had become jumpy and incoherent, speaking in a language no one could understand. Morris arrived at the FBI to report to his superior, though he was late, his excuse being that he got lost on his first visit. Morris spilled every detail about last night's operation with the eagerness of a brown-noser. Still in Mulder's body, he shamelessly flirted with Kirsch's secretary. Scully asked him what the hell was wrong with him. Despite all this odd behavior, she just chalked it up to Mulder acting strangely, not realizing anything was actually amiss. Across town, Mulder wasn't having a great time either. Morris's wife scolded him for staying up all night watching adult programs instead of coming to bed. Worse, he kept muttering Dana Scully in his sleep. She accused him of cheating, asking if Dana was his new side piece. To make matters worse, Mulder called their kids by the wrong names. The children were upset, thinking their dad didn't care about them. Mulder used going to work as an excuse to escape the chaos. Before leaving, Morris's wife reminded him to change clothes, but the closet was a sea of identical white shirts and black suits. Looking at his reflection, a pot-bellied version of himself, Mulder started dancing out of sheer boredom. Later, Mulder's colleague brought urgent news. The pilot from last night's crash was still babbling in that unknown language. A translator was called in and identified it as a Native American dialect. The pilot claimed to be an elderly Native woman from the nearby area. The team tracked her down, and sure enough, she insisted she was the actual pilot. She said their aircraft malfunctioned and crashed, and when she woke up, her soul had switched bodies with the pilot. On his way to work, Mulder stopped at a gas station and used the payphone to call Scully. He identified himself as the real Mulder, but to Scully, Mulder was the man standing next to her, Morris in disguise. Thinking it was one of Mulder's sources on the phone, she let Morris listen in. Morris, however, couldn't have cared less. He was too busy playing video games, with zero interest in Mulder's relentless pursuit of the truth. Mulder bought snacks at the station and left behind 2 coins as change. Moments after he left, an earthquake struck. Alerted by a tip, Morris's colleagues rushed to the gas station and ordered Mulder to turn around. Gasoline had spilled everywhere. Mulder suddenly remembered the store clerk inside and dashed back in, only to find the clerk's lower body had somehow fused into the floor. Without hesitation, one of the agents shot and killed the clerk, then ordered the entire station destroyed. Nearby, they also discovered a lizard partially fused with stone. After reviewing the evidence, the team concluded that the crash sites, including the gas station, had experienced localized space-time distortions. These distortions had merged matter together and caused bizarre phenomena like body swapping. The likely cause was the experimental aircraft. They believed the aircraft's anti-gravity propulsion warped space-time to move, and the sudden change in trajectory had triggered the anomalies. Mulder and Morris had been caught in that exact zone. Still, that raised another question. Why were they the only ones affected? One colleague pulled out the flight data recorder, saying they'd need to analyze it further. But for now, their orders were clear: destroy all evidence of the distortion and eliminate all witnesses. Back at the F.B.I., Morris, still in Mulder's skin, continued shamelessly flirting with Kirsch's horny secretary. Scully informed him that she'd received intel from a source. There had been an explosion at a gas station near Area 51. Morris couldn't have been less interested. He had no intention of investigating anything strange. Furious, Scully stormed off alone to the scene. At the ruins, she found the 2 coins Mulder had left behind, now fused together. Another morning dawned, and Mulder once again found himself sleeping on the couch, mumbling Dana Scully in his wet sleep. This pushed Morris's wife over the edge. She demanded to know if he was having an affair with this Dana Scully. Thinking quickly, Mulder lied and said Dana Scully was a man. He tried to confess the truth, that he wasn't really Morris, but she misinterpreted it, assuming he was just an aging husband with sex performance issues. She patted him on the back and reassured him that modern medicine could help with that. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Morris's wife cheerfully answered and found Dana Scully herself standing there. Furious, she yelled, "Dana Scully was not a man." Mulder quickly pulled Scully aside and explained everything, that he and Morris had switched bodies. He rattled off a list of her personal habits only the real Mulder would know. But Scully is tough and skeptical. She wasn't buying his smelly bullshit. What she didn't know was that Morris had secretly followed her. The cunning impostor immediately reported Scully's unauthorized contact with military personnel to Kirsch and Mulder's colleagues. Meanwhile, Mulder infiltrated the base and managed to steal the aircraft's black box. But what he didn't realize was that one of his coworkers had been watching from the shadows the entire time. That night, Mulder arranged to meet Scully at a convenience store. But just as he was about to hand over the data recorder, military personnel lying in ambush swarmed in and caught him red-handed. The recorder was quickly confiscated and returned to the men in black. It turned out Morris had reported Mulder, and after receiving the tip, Kirsch threatened Scully. If she wanted to keep her job, she'd have to help capture the informant she was in contact with. So Scully teamed up with the military to set Mulder up. Despite Mulder's repeated efforts to explain and even stealing the data recorder as proof, he still failed to earn Scully's trust. Trapped by Morris's schemes, Scully could only watch helplessly as Mulder was dragged away. In short, the Air Force was testing a new prototype aircraft, but the test went wrong, creating a localized space-time distortion. Within that area, a few people and animals were fused together or experienced bizarre body swaps. Mulder and an Air Force officer named Morris, one a determined FBI agent, the other a sleazy brown-noser, ended up swapping souls. While Morris quickly adapted to Mulder's life and was clearly enjoying himself, poor Mulder was stuck dealing with Morris's nagging wife, 2 unruly kids, and a job full of backstabbing colleagues. Naturally, Mulder was desperate to switch back. After all, facing off with the beautiful Scully was a lot more appealing than dealing with Morris's mess. So he stole the data recorder, hoping to confirm whether the military aircraft was actually a UFO and get Scully to help him figure out how to reverse the time-space distortion. Unfortunately, he overestimated Scully's judgment, at least for now. Afterward, Mulder is dragged into the military base right in front of Scully and thrown into a holding cell. In the cell next to him is the elderly Native American woman who had swapped souls with the pilot. She gloomily tells Mulder they're doomed. These people will erase them like they never existed. Back at the FBI, the sly Morris is still killing time playing video games. From his perspective, Mulder's life is a dream. Flatter the right people, and you're set for life. Thanks to Morris constantly feeding dirt to Kirsch, Scully gets suspended from duty. Morris puts on an act, cursing out the director in front of her, then casually invites Scully over to Mulder's place for dinner. Surprisingly, she agrees. Morris goes shopping and clearly has more than just dinner on his mind. He decides to tidy up Mulder's bedroom, only to discover that the famously stoic Mulder actually sleeps on the couch, while the bedroom is a chaotic mess packed with junk and a few adult magazines. Back in the holding cell, the chatty old lady keeps bragging to Mulder about her past exploits. Suddenly, Mulder is taken to the general's office, but instead of punishment, the general praises him for his talents. Mulder plays along. He tells the general that the data recorder he stole was actually from a junked aircraft and that he gave it to the FBI on purpose, to fool Scully into revealing the mole in the base. He claimed his acting was flawless, but unluckily they arrested him before he got a name. The general buys it, and Mulder walks free, once again thanks to his quick thinking. Mulder returns to Morris's house, only to find that all his things have been tossed out by Morris's furious wife. The kids are ignoring him, and his co-workers don't trust him either. With nowhere else to go and surveillance closing in, Mulder is forced to hide at home. He tries one more time to explain to the wife that he's not Morris, but she just thinks he's delusional. That evening, Scully came to Mulder's house, which Morris had meticulously cleaned and organized. He'd thrown out all of Mulder's clutter and replaced it with elegant furniture. Morris pulled Scully onto his big, soft new bed, whispering sweet nothings and even popping open a bottle of champagne. Scully caught on immediately, asking if he wanted to try something more fun, tossing a pair of handcuffs onto the bed. Morris grinned knowingly. He loved that kind of thrill, and without hesitation, he handcuffed himself to the bed frame. At last, Scully saw through the charade. This wasn't Mulder, but an impostor. She warned Morris to either tell her the truth or she would beat him half to death. Faced with no way out, Morris spilled his frustrations. His wife was dull and harsh, his two kids were wild and disrespectful, and he was stuck with a $400,000 mortgage on a house worth only $220,000. To make matters worse, his job was demanding, but poorly paid. That's why he had no interest in switching back with Mulder, and honestly, he didn't even know how to undo the swap. Just then, Mulder's informant called, arranging to meet at a bar. Scully drove Morris there, warning him not to run or she would take him down. Funny enough, to avoid being watched by his co-workers, Mulder had also brought Morris's wife to that very bar. Morris finally met Mulder's informant, who was none other than the top general at the Air Force Base. The general didn't know about the soul swap. He told the man in Morris's body that he'd deliberately sabotaged the aircraft's invisibility system during the test flight so Mulder could witness it firsthand. But the tinkering went wrong, causing the crash and the space-time distortion. He then handed over the aircraft's data recorder to Morris. Morris tried to leave with the recorder, but found the bar swarming with men in black keeping an eye on Mulder. To avoid them, he hid in the restroom. Meanwhile, Mulder tried to slip out, but by accident, he climbed into Scully's car. This time, Scully didn't mistake him for Morris, and the two started chatting in the car. Unfortunately, Morris's wife, who had stepped outside for some air, spotted them. Back inside, she threw a drink in Mulder's face. Mulder headed to the restroom to clean up, only to bump into Morris hiding from the men in black. Angry at being set up, Mulder pinned Morris against the wall in a sudden confrontation. After giving the data recorder to Morris, the general also planned to leave, but the bar was crawling with men in black agents, so he too ducked into the restroom. And so, the three of them ended up having an unexpected friendly chat in the cramped bathroom. Finally, Mulder used a classic diversion trick, leading the men in black out of the bar alongside the general. This bought Morris the time he needed to escape. Meanwhile, Scully took the data recorder to meet with the lone gunman trio. Morris introduced himself, explained the soul swap with Mulder, and revealed his job was to spread fake news, divert attention, and deceive the public. For example, Saddam Hussein was actually an actor hired by the US government. They backed him in 1979. Whenever the government needed to shift focus, Saddam would stage some aggressive spectacle. Many reported accidents and major incidents were fabricated to distract the public. Cut to the military base. The general told Mulder that Morris now knew he was the informant and probably didn't have much time left. When Mulder asked why he betrayed his own organization, the general said that as an Air Force Base commander, his job was only to test aircraft. He was curious about the true purpose behind these crafts and whether aliens really existed. That's why he became Mulder's informant, to help him uncover the truth. Scene shift. 3 young people arrive just outside the base, eager to catch a glimpse of the legendary UFO. 2 of them cling to each other, while the third spots a mysterious flying object streaking across the sky. Excited, the third youth tries to turn back and tell his friends, but to his shock, he sees the other 2 have physically merged, their faces fused together, and the girl's hand passing right through her boyfriend's body. Panicked, the young man flags down a car by the roadside, begging for help. To his horror, the driver is an agent dressed in black, a colleague of Morris. The youth leads the agent to the fused pair, only to find that the 2 friends have suddenly separated and lost all memory of what just happened. The agent watches the scene with a knowing look, as if piecing the puzzle together. Meanwhile, Scully and Morris drive away from Area 51, passing by the gas station that exploded previously. What was rubble just days ago now looks perfectly intact, and the employees inside seem unharmed. Scully immediately heads to Morris's home. Morris watches his weary wife with a heavy heart. Scully relays the news about the gas station's restoration to Mulder. They realize the space-time distortion is reversing itself and that they must return to the affected zone to restore everything to normal. Morris's colleague takes Mulder and Morris back to the site of the space-time distortion. The colleague explains that Mulder's status as a mole inside the military is a stain on his record, so he wants to help Mulder and Morris swap back. As the distortion fades, a flying craft passes overhead, drawing everyone's gaze. At that very moment, the distortion ends. Mulder's and Morris's souls return to their original bodies. Everyone loses the memories of the past few days. Everything resets to the moment when Mulder and Morris first met. Everyone returns to their normal lives. On the table, Scully finds 2 coins that had been fused together. Mulder arrives home to find it thoroughly cleaned and refreshed, exactly how Morris had left it days earlier. He double-checks the house number to make sure he hasn't entered the wrong place. Both men are puzzled, but can recall nothing. In this story, the space-time distortion was not caused by the military's experimental aircraft. After all, only one aircraft was tested, and it crashed. The second craft seen by the 3 youths was likely the real alien UFO, as was the first one Mulder saw. The UFO's passage caused the space-time distortion, erased witnesses' memories, and indirectly led to the crash of the military aircraft. But the distortion was temporary. Like a stretched rubber band, it eventually snapped back. The soul swap ended, and Mulder and Morris returned to their lives. Since time rewound a few days, Morris's interference never happened, so Scully was never suspended. The scene shifts to a Christmas Eve when a solitary Mulder is standing outside a haunted house in Maryland. He's even invited Scully, who's busy preparing Christmas gifts at home. Scully complains that Mulder won't let her relax even on Christmas Eve. To convince her to stay, Mulder tells her the house's story. Legend says that in 1917, during years ravaged by war and plague, tragedy struck every home. The house's owner and his lover took their lives together here, vowing never to be separated. Since then, every Christmas Eve, their ghosts appear in the haunted house. Mulder says it is touching and proposes they come in and see for themselves. Scully refuses. Mulder goes in alone. Scully plans to return home to spend Christmas with her family, but suddenly her car keys are missing. She chases after Mulder to ask for them, but Mulder denies taking them. At that moment, the clock strikes 11. The haunted house's door slams shut by itself. Scully tries with all her might to open it, but it won't budge. Scully wanted to leave, but Mulder showed no sign of wanting to go anywhere. With no other choice, Scully reluctantly stayed and wandered the haunted house with him. Suddenly, a ghostly figure flashed behind Scully. She was terrified, and to steel herself, she started explaining to Mulder that ghosts aren't real. Mulder led Scully upstairs, and at that moment a door swung open by itself. Inside, a light was on, and the stove had just gone out, as if someone had been living there recently. Mulder explained that in the past 80 years, only 3 couples had lived in this house, but every one of them died tragically on Christmas Eve, and since then, no one dared move in again. A flash of lightning lit up the sky outside, plunging the room into darkness. Mulder noticed a noise coming from beneath a section of the floor, while Scully realized the door had somehow locked behind them and the ladder to the attic had vanished. Mulder teased Scully for being scared, then confidently lifted the floorboard. Beneath it lay two mummified bodies, a man and a woman, both clearly dead from gunshot wounds. The woman wore a white shirt and black suit, and the man was dressed in a black coat. Their clothes matched Mulder's and Scully's outfits exactly. Terrified, they both bolted from the room, but it was like they'd walked into a ghost trap. No matter how many doors they passed through, they found themselves trapped inside the same house. Because the house had two doors, they decided to split up and each try a different exit. However, after passing through the two doors separately, neither escaped, and behind them, the door they'd just come through had turned into a solid wall. Mulder and Scully found themselves trapped in two identical rooms, separated by an invisible barrier. Mulder called out Scully's name in desperation. Just then, an old man wearing a fisherman's hat entered through the other door. He claimed this was his home and accused Mulder of trespassing. Mulder suspected all this was the old man's prank. Even the two mummified bodies had mysteriously disappeared. The old man's calm reassurances made Mulder start doubting his own senses. Maybe it was all hallucination. The old man pointed out how lonely Mulder was, how he didn't fit in and had no friends. Mulder insisted he did have a partner named Scully, but the old man insisted she was just a figment of Mulder's imagination. Firm in his belief, Mulder demanded proof. Miraculously, the wall behind him vanished. The old man encouraged Mulder to walk through where the wall had been to find Scully. But when Mulder tried, he slammed into an invisible brick wall. The lights went out, and the room remained empty. The old man appeared to have been nothing more than another hallucination. Cut to Scully, trapped in her room searching for Mulder. Suddenly, the door behind her opened, and an elderly woman wrapped tightly in a white coat stepped inside. Scully jumped in fright, and the woman looked just as scared. She switched on the light and introduced herself as a resident of the house. Scully relaxed and asked if she'd seen Mulder. Unlike the old man, this woman didn't deny Mulder's existence. She said Mulder was probably lost in the main hall. Scully then noticed the mummified bodies on the floor were gone. The woman gave Scully chills. It was as if she could see straight into Scully's soul. She pointed out a dark secret Scully had been hiding, that deep down, Scully always argued against Mulder, eager to prove his beliefs wrong. Though Scully said she didn't believe in ghosts, the truth was she secretly did. Suddenly, the old man appeared through another door. The two elderly figures were a couple. Scully forced them to raise their hands, only to see a large hole in the woman's body. Removing the old man's fisherman's hat, Scully revealed an even bigger hole in his skull. Terrified, Scully fainted. The old couple were mischievous ghosts who loved to torment couples in the house on Christmas Eve. Back to Mulder, he's desperately trying to find a way out. The elderly woman appears and Mulder instantly recognizes her as a ghost. She and the old man are the house's former owners. The woman shows Mulder an old photo album containing pictures of her and her lover alive. She reveals that the legend was false. They didn't die in a lover's pact, but rather shot each other to death. Still, the result was the same. She asks Mulder if Scully were to shoot him, would he shoot back? Mulder firmly replies no. He would never shoot Scully, nor let any harm come to her. The scene cuts back to Scully waking up from her faint. The old woman hands her car keys, though she never explains where they came from. Outside, Mulder's voice calls her name. The old woman warns Mulder's gone mad. He's going to kill her and she has to run. Scully refuses to believe Mulder could turn on her. She forces the old woman to open the door, and in walks Mulder, gun in hand. He mutters they can't get out, then levels the weapon at Scully. She tries to calm him to put the gun down and promises they'll find a way out. But Mulder, eyes haunted, confesses that even if they escape, he'll still feel alone, out of place. Then, without warning, he fires, and the bullet hits Scully in the chest. Scully's face goes pale. Suddenly, the old man drags the mad Mulder away, and it turns out this wasn't Mulder at all, but the old woman in disguise, testing whether Scully would shoot Mulder. After the couple leave, the real Mulder appears and rushes to Scully's side, only to be shot by Scully, who even wishes him a Merry Christmas as she pulls the trigger. But this Scully is also the woman's illusion. Now both Mulder and Scully lie wounded. Scully wakes in a daze and crawls toward the front door, with Mulder trailing behind. They accuse each other and raise their guns again, but neither can bring himself to pull the trigger. In a flash of insight, Mulder stands up unscathed, helps Scully to her feet, and together they walk out of the haunted house, hand in hand, as if nothing happened. Their wounds were never real. It was all illusion. The clock outside tolls 12 times. It's Christmas Day. The ghostly couple sit by the fire. The woman sighs that they almost had them, but they left alive. Next time they should make it even more convincing. Mulder is home alone. Scully has gone to spend Christmas with her family. He sits on the couch watching an old movie from Daniel's CC Movie Channel. Late that night, sleepless and missing him, Scully returns. To their surprise, each has brought the other a small gift. Outside, snow falls softly. Inside, Mulder and Scully unwrap their presents by the warm glow of the fireplace. The scene shifts to Laura and her husband Wayne arriving at the hospital for their 6-month prenatal check. When the doctor points out unusual bony protrusions on the baby's shoulders and skull, Wayne breaks down and rushes out, sobbing that he just wanted a healthy child. That night, Wayne brings Laura a glass of warm milk. They say goodnight and drift off to sleep. Laura jolts awake to flames roaring at her bedside and a demonic figure throwing back her covers. She cries for Wayne, but he's nowhere to be seen. In desperation, she bites the creature's neck and watches in horror as it pulls her baby from her womb, horns sprouting from its head. Screaming in a chicken voice, she wakes again, just a nightmare. Wayne soothes her using his muscles, but as they're about to settle again, Laura notices blood soaking the sheets. She's miscarried, and the baby is gone. The next morning, Laura's brother, the local sheriff, storms into FBI headquarters in Washington, pleading with Agent Spender to reopen the case. Spender, now nominally in charge of the X-Files, could not care less about supernatural miscarriage cases. He shreds the request without a second thought. But Mulder, intrigued, fishes the torn pages from the wastebasket, tapes them back together, and heads for Laura's small town. The sheriff brings Mulder to Laura's home, where she and Wayne recount that terrifying dream. Mulder calls Scully, telling her that medieval folklore is full of tales about demons using human women as hosts to breed their offspring. That very evening, Laura returns to the bedroom and finds Wayne missing. In the overgrown yard, she spots him digging through piles of dead leaves and tossing something into a backyard incinerator. Wayne claims he's just burning the leaves, and Laura hesitates to question him. Once she's gone, he collapses in tears by the fire. Scully calls with the lab results. The fetal scan confirms 2 horn-like protrusions on the skull. Even more alarming, Laura's blood is laced with a potent herbal abortifacient. Under local law, terminating a pregnancy past 6 months is a crime, and if Laura self-medicated, she faces arrest. In the middle of the call, Mulder watches Wayne drive off in his red sports car, not to work, but to the home of another woman, Wayne's second wife, Betsy, who's also heavily pregnant. Suspecting that Laura's house hides evidence, Mulder brings the sheriff back for a search. When Wayne sees them prowling around the incinerator, he panics and drags Laura into the yard, confessing the truth. That night, he saw her sleepwalking into the kitchen and ingesting a massive dose of herbs, causing the miscarriage. In a misguided bid to protect her, he incinerated the fetal remains. Shocked, Laura immediately turns herself in to her sheriff brother. Laura is arrested for illegal abortion. Wayne feigns anguish, promising to hire the best lawyer, but Mulder sees the truth. Wayne is a complete scumbag, and his wife's arrest seems to brighten his day. Today is Betsy's 6-month prenatal check. Wayne speeds off in his red sports car, only to be blocked by Mulder. Posing as a medical claims adjuster, Wayne insists on drawing blood from a client. Mulder, unrelenting, insists on tagging along, so Wayne grudgingly brings him to the client's home and performs the test. Watching the family's 3 happy boys plays right into Wayne's secret longing for children. Desperate to escape, Wayne borrows their phone and calls the FBI to report Mulder, finally shaking off his unwelcome shadow. After ditching Mulder, Wayne heads to the county jail. Laura has pieced together a chilling truth. At the night of her miscarriage, Wayne was nowhere near her. In her terror, she bit what she thought was a demon and found teeth marks on Wayne's neck. Realizing Wayne is the demon, she understands that his unborn child's horns were no fluke. It was his own offspring. Confronted at the jail, Wayne drops his facade, drains Laura's spirit, then immediately crumples in fake grief, claiming she collapsed into his arms. Miraculously, Laura's heartbeats returns under emergency care. She's rushed to the hospital, while Mulder shares his findings with Scully. Wayne is a Czech immigrant who arrived in 1994 under several aliases. He's been twice charged with spousal murder and let go each time for lack of evidence. His old surname means demon in Slavic languages. That night, Wayne slips out to his second wife's home. Furious to learn her baby passed the health scan, save for minor skull and shoulder bumps, his dream of a normal child shatters again. Over milk laced with abortifacient herbs, he sends Betsy into a magic milk slumber. In her nightmare, a demon stalks her bed, only for Betsy to snap awake, seize Wayne's neck, and bark at him to stop. She squeezes until Wayne reverts from demon form back to human. Meanwhile, Mulder and the local police dig up Wayne's yard, uncovering the skeletal remains of multiple fetuses. He hypothesizes that Wayne aborts every demonic-looking pregnancy, buries the bodies, then moves on. Racing to Betsy's, they find her outside, bloodied and weak. She gasps. He had taken her baby. At Betsy's, they catch Wayne digging again. He sobs, saying Betsy is cruel. She's not like Laura, but Laura's sheriff brother levels one shot, riddling Wayne with bullets. Wayne's last act is to return Laura's stolen soul. She revives as his heart stops. A second yard excavation reveals Betsy's buried fetuses. They are normal human children. Betsy confesses she yearned for a demon's baby. Whenever her pregnancy proved human, she secretly aborted it. After the revelation, Betsy speeds off in Wayne's red car, the cradle in her passenger seat rocking with a tiny horned infant. She beams with triumph, the same look Wayne wore the night Laura was jailed. The scene shifts to Sheila, who is a weather reporter in a small town. It's Valentine's Day, and she's carefully prepared a gift for her boyfriend, Daryl. The forecast predicts continued dry weather. There hasn't been any rain for weeks, and local farmers are at their wits' end. Sheila eagerly waits for Daryl to get home, but when he finally arrives, he's in a foul mood. He's furious that Sheila published their engagement announcement in the town paper. He's not ready to make their relationship public. Daryl is a lazy troublemaker, and now he's taking out his frustrations on Sheila, mocking her for her weight and storming off without a second thought. Heartbroken, Sheila breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, Daryl cracks open a beer and takes a late-night drive through town. That night, the town's dry streak finally ends, but instead of rain, a freak hailstorm hits, with massive ice chunks pelting down from the sky. To make matters worse, Daryl crashes his car while driving drunk. Oddly, every hailstone is shaped like a little heart. Even the wrath of nature came in the shape of love. 6 months later, Mulder and Scully are invited to the town by the mayor, who throws them a modest welcome party. He explains that they haven't had rain in months, and, strangely enough, Daryl, that same deadbeat ex-boyfriend of Sheila's, has become the town's self-proclaimed rainmaker. Somehow, with nothing but a bizarre dance ritual, Daryl seems able to summon real storms. The mayor suspects this whole drought might be Daryl's doing, so he can profit off of his so-called rainmaking. It sounds far-fetched, but Mulder admits the weather here is unusual. Tornadoes, hailstorms, you name it. They visit Daryl's rainmaking business, where his assistant tells them he's away on a rain tour. Intrigued, Mulder suggests they stop by the local news station. There, they meet Hart, Sheila's co-worker and a fellow weather reporter, who also just happens to be Daryl's high school classmate. Hart admits that while Daryl was never the brightest, his rain dances do seem to work every single time. Later, Mulder and Scully attend one of Daryl's ceremonies. Since the accident, Daryl has lost a leg, and his glamorous assistant now carries his prosthetic around like it's part of the act. Daryl explains that ever since the car crash, he's been receiving divine visions. One day, something compelled him to start dancing like a lunatic in the middle of the road, and as he danced in TikTok style, the skies opened up and it began to pour. Elsewhere, Sheila reminds Hart that this Friday is the high school reunion. It's the big one, the 10-year gathering, and urges him not to forget to come. As they chat about Mulder and Scully, it's clear Sheila doesn't like them much. She even mutters she wishes they'd just go back to wherever they came from. That night, Mulder and Scully check into a small motel in town. While settling in, Mulder notices a strange mini-tornado forming just outside. A cow is sucked into the vortex, then hurled straight through the roof, landing right on Mulder's bed. He later tells Scully the cow tried to murder him. Mulder suffers only minor injuries, but Hart and Sheila rush over to check on him. Instead of expressing concern for Mulder, Sheila bursts into tears over the loss of the cow. She tearfully recalls her strange history with weather, the prom night storm that destroyed the gym, a freak snowstorm on her summer wedding day, and the day her divorce was finalized, when the clouds overhead looked like they were laughing at her. She confesses that 6 months ago, after her breakup with Daryl, it hailed, and Daryl ended up in a car accident. Ever since, she's believed her emotions influence the weather and everything feels like it revolves around her. Mulder gently assures her it's not her fault. His kind words lift her spirits. But once Sheila leaves, a police officer quietly tells Hart and Mulder that Daryl's accident had little to do with the weather. The real cause was drunk driving. Hart is stunned since he always assumed Daryl's disability was a tragic act of nature. Meanwhile, Daryl is still out in the pouring rain, shamelessly flirting with his assistant. Suddenly, the rain just stops. He wonders where his rain has gone. Mulder begins to suspect that neither Daryl nor Sheila is behind the bizarre weather. The real source is the unassuming Hart. Digging through old newspapers, Mulder finds a report of rose petals raining down on the town in 1991, the same day Hart's mother passed away. But Scully refuses to believe emotions can control the weather. She books a flight for her and Mulder to leave town the next day, the day of the reunion. Meanwhile, Hart plans to confess his longtime crush on Sheila. But things take a turn when Sheila calls and reveals she now has feelings for Mulder. Crushed, Hart stares out into the night as lightning splits the sky. A literal storm brews. Mulder agrees to leave with Scully, but before going, he visits Hart to say goodbye and encourages him to get his emotions under control for the town's sake. He knows Hart has feelings for Sheila and urges him to be honest. Suppressing feelings only makes the storms worse. Just then, Scully calls, revealing that the airport is fogged in, visibility 0. Mulder realizes Hart's inner confusion is now a weather event. With their flight grounded, he decides to stay and help. Meanwhile, Daryl, now powerless, jobless, and drinking again, is spiraling. His assistant tries to cheer him up, promising to support them both. But Daryl, convinced Sheila is the source of his powers, dumps his assistant and sets off to win Sheila back. Mulder takes it upon himself to coach Hart in the art of love. Spurred on by Mulder's encouragement, Hart works up the courage to tell Sheila how he feels, only to be crushed again when she says she likes Mulder. Devastated, Hart walks off. Meanwhile, Daryl shows up at the TV station trying to win Sheila back. Mulder happens to be there and ends up rescuing her. Sheila's so touched by his heroism that she plants a smelly kiss on him, just as Hart walks in and sees everything. On a nearby screen, a red alert flashes. A massive storm is rolling in. The National Weather Service issues a flash flood warning for the entire area. To calm the weather, and Hart, they all rush to the reunion. Hart wants nothing to do with Mulder, but Sheila practically lights up when she sees him. Scully nudges Hart to ask Sheila for a dance. In the middle of the dance floor, this 30-something man finally bares his soul. He tells Sheila he's had feelings for her since high school. His heartfelt, genuine confession catches her off guard. After all, they've known each other forever. Scully quietly tells Sheila he's a good guy. When Sheila realizes the entire town's bizarre weather was a reflection of Hart's hidden pain, she's deeply moved. Outside, the storm reaches a dangerous peak. If it keeps up, the whole town might flood. Sheila finds Hart. They have a real conversation, open and honest. And finally, Sheila accepts the love of the quiet, steadfast man who's always been there for her. They wrestle their juicy tongues, causing the skies to clear and the storm to pass. The storm over the small town stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Daryl, too, seemed to have come to some realizations. He apologized to his young girlfriend, and the two reconciled. In the end, the only ones left single at the dance were Mulder and Scully. 1 year later, Sheila sits at home with her child, watching her husband Hart deliver the weather report on TV. Their life is simple and happy. Outside, the sky is a bright blue, with fluffy white clouds and a perfect rainbow arching overhead. The scene shifts to a hospital receiving a critical patient in the morning. The man is suffering from a total vascular blockage, his blood vessels filled with some kind of foreign substance. Within minutes, his heart stops. The medical team prepares to begin resuscitation, but the doctor urges them to stop and let the man go peacefully. The patient is none other than Skinner. How did he end up like this? Lifeless on a hospital bed, pronounced dead by a doctor? Let's rewind 24 hours. Skinner had gone to a boxing gym for his usual morning workout. He eyed his opponent, then stepped into the ring. After just one round, it was clear he was losing steam. His vision blurred, and he was knocked out cold. When he woke up, he was already in the hospital. It was just after 9 a.m. when he received a strange phone call. A robotic voice on the other end told him he was going to die, and that he had exactly 24 hours left to live. Perplexed, Skinner underwent a checkup by the doctor, who said there was nothing serious, just a bruised rib. Relieved, Skinner returned to the FBI. He dismissed the call as a prank and didn't think twice. But Mulder wasn't so sure. With Skinner's vision still blurred, he laid down on a couch to rest. Mulder immediately called Scully in to check on him. She noticed the bruise on Skinner's ribs had spread. Mulder asked Skinner if he'd experienced anything unusual that day. Skinner recalled arriving at the FBI building as usual, taking the elevator, then being approached in the hallway by a man in a brown suit who grabbed his wrist and asked for the time. Mulder suspected the man had poisoned Skinner through touch. Reviewing surveillance footage, he and Scully were shocked to identify the man as Dr. Orgel, a world-renowned physicist. If Orgel had indeed poisoned Skinner, they feared his condition might worsen fast. He needed to be hospitalized immediately, but Skinner refused. Instead, he and Mulder went straight to Orgel's home. Orgel was visibly nervous when he saw Skinner and insisted he hadn't been to the FBI that morning. Sensing something was off, Mulder and Skinner suspected Orgel had been kidnapped or coerced. They entered the house, one from the front, one from the back. Inside, they found two men in black. A scuffle broke out. Skinner was injured and Orgel was abducted. Mulder managed to catch one of the attackers, who spoke Arabic and carried a diplomatic passport. Frustrated, Skinner was forced to order Mulder to release the man. He explained that the attackers were members of a visiting Tunisian diplomatic delegation, and offending them could spark an international incident. Scully visited the hospital to examine Skinner's blood samples. Strangely, black sediment had begun to form in the stationary blood. These black particles turned out to be pure carbon, highly active within the bloodstream and constantly self-replicating. As they accumulated, they began to solidify into irregular shapes, eventually causing fatal cardiac arrest in the victim. To save Skinner, Mulder tore through Dr. Orgel's home and finally discovered a photo of Orgel with a U.S. senator. Mulder went straight to the senator's house. The photo had been taken just 3 days earlier at a congressional vote on something called SR 819. Mulder was determined to uncover the truth. The senator claimed SR 819 was just a health bill, but Mulder didn't buy it since a health bill won't involve poisoning a deputy director of the FBI. Still, the senator stonewalled him and asked him to leave. Meanwhile, Skinner was alone in an underground parking garage. The black carbon in his blood had reached his neck. He was running out of time. Just then, one of the black-suited men from the Tunisian diplomatic delegation appeared, clearly intent on finishing the job. A gunfight broke out in the garage. Weak and nearly blind, Skinner struggled to fight back. Suddenly, a mysterious figure in a car rammed into the would-be assassin, saving Skinner's life. He had no idea who had helped him and didn't have the strength to find out. Unconscious, Skinner was rushed to the hospital. The doctors, desperate to stop the spread of the infection, prepared to amputate both of his arms. Fortunately, Scully arrived just in time to halt the procedure. She knew the root cause was in his blood, and amputation would solve nothing. Back at FBI headquarters, Mulder discovered a copy of the Senate bill on Skinner's assistant's desk. As deputy director, Skinner was tasked with reviewing the legislation to ensure it didn't violate trade laws or involve restricted technology. But the file was incomplete. It lacked Dr. Orgel's technical report and Skinner's clearance analysis. Mulder concluded that Orgel hadn't poisoned Skinner. He had likely intended to warn him that the bill violated new technology export restrictions. But for some reason, he'd been unable to say anything. Just then, Skinner's phone rang again. Mulder answered. A synthetic, computerized voice warned him to drop the investigation. There was nothing he could do to save Skinner. Mulder was certain the caller was nearby. He handed the phone to Scully and began searching the hallway. Around the corner, a long-haired man was crouched down, transmitting voice messages to Skinner's phone through a device. When he realized Mulder had spotted him, he bolted. Mulder gave chase all the way to the underground parking garage, but by the time he arrived, the man had already escaped in a car. At the garage exit, Mulder found the vehicle abandoned. Inside were several long strands of hair. Forensics later confirmed the hair came from an expensive wig, meaning the suspect was in disguise, and the long hair was fake. They also found soil on the tires containing high levels of PCBs, suggesting the car had recently been at a research lab or an old power plant. The long-haired man, still on the run, called the senator to report that their bill had encountered a new threat. He revealed he had kidnapped Dr. Orgel and gave the senator an address. The senator drove alone to an old factory building. There, Dr. Orgel was chained to a metal bed, clearly also poisoned. The senator tried to free him, unaware that the long-haired man was lurking in the shadows. Using a handheld device, the man cranked the settings to maximum. Orgel screamed in agony, his body racked with pain. The senator stood by, visibly shaken and terrified. Cut to Skinner, who now knows the end is near. He apologized to Scully for never taking a side, for prioritizing self-preservation, for being afraid that aligning with Mulder and Scully would drag him down, and for ultimately handing them over to Deputy Director Kirsch. Scully told him it was okay. After all, he had saved them many times over the years. Then Skinner remembered something. The long-haired man had been following him all along. He had seen him at the boxing gym, at FBI headquarters, and even at the hospital. And it was that same man who had saved him in the parking garage. He urged Scully to check the surveillance footage. He was sure the long-haired man would be on the tapes. Mulder traced the senator's mysterious envoy to an aging factory, but Dr. Orgel was gone without a trace. Through Scully's analysis, he realized that SR 819 wasn't about healthcare at all, but nanotechnology. Skinner's blood had been seeded with swarms of self-replicating nanobots. The senator warned Mulder to drop the case. Skinner was already doomed. Mulder threatened to expose him for who he really was if he let Skinner die. The senator, visibly shaken, insisted he was also a victim, just fighting to stay alive. At precisely the 24-hour mark, Skinner's strength gave out and he flatlined. The doctor ordered the team to stand down, but as they prepared to pronounce him dead, a familiar figure slipped into his room and remotely shut off the nanobots. In that instant, Skinner's heart kicked back into action. He stared through the door at the long-haired rescuer, a look heavy with gratitude and recognition. 3 weeks later, Skinner has made a full recovery and is back at the FBI. Scully calls it a miracle. Mulder has even printed the long-hair suspect's photo from surveillance, yet Skinner insists he has no recollection of the man. Meanwhile, the SR 819 export bill quietly vanished from the Senate docket. No explanation given. Mulder points out that the suspect's car was a government vehicle and that the fake Tunisian diplomats were clearly a cover. Yet that same driver had deliberately risked his own people's lives and saved Skinner's. Mulder pleads for Skinner's blessing to keep digging. Skinner refuses. He warns Mulder to leave it alone for both their sakes. On his way home, Skinner's car is ambushed. The driver, none other than Alex, steps out holding the nano control device. Skinner demands to know why Alex injected him with nanobots, then saved him. Alex only smiles and says he'll find out soon enough before slipping away. Skinner watches Alex go, a knowing glint in his eye, revealing that he's long since recognized his old foe. Alex's first opportunity may well have been at the boxing gym, and since Alex has been back in the secret organization's fold, it seems clear the conspiracy behind the export bill runs far deeper than any single senator. Perhaps the secret organization intended to push nanotech exports through the export bill, using Orgel's report and Skinner's review as cover, and when both men balked, they sent Alex in secret organization disguise to clean up loose ends. Dr. Orgel's fate remains unknown. No body was ever found on the factory floor. Skinner's refusal to help Mulder is no cowardice, but protection. He knows Mulder thrives on danger, and one pulled thread could cost them both everything. And the doctor, who stood down when Skinner flatlined, was likely in on the secret. Better to let Skinner die with the secret organization's dirty work buried in his veins. The scene shifts to a late night in New York, where a young woman in a crisp white blouse senses someone following her after work. She hurries into a crowded elevator, only to have the same elderly man slip in behind her. In the mirrored doors, everyone else's reflection appears in black and white, except the old man's, which remains in vivid color. Panicked, the woman flees the elevator when it reopens, but it snaps shut again, then lurches downward, free-falling past floor after floor. Meanwhile, the old man calmly jogs down the emergency stairs to the lobby, whips out his camera, and photographs the mangled elevator wreckage, like some grim tourist. Meanwhile, Mulder and Scully are stuck doing routine paperwork when Kirsch hands Scully a new case file. A rookie agent from the New York field office is on the line. He says someone's snapping crime scene photos before 911 calls are even made. One chilling example, a murder scene photo timestamped 10:29 p.m., yet the neighbor only dialed 911 at 11:14. And this isn't a one-off. Dozens of homicide scenes bear the same impossible lead time, and the culprit seems to be none other than tabloids reporter Alfred, who always arrives first, camera in hand, sometimes beating the police by nearly an hour. The rookie agent suspects Alfred isn't just a paparazzo. He may be the killer or in league with one. Kirsch assigns Scully to partner with the rookie agent in New York. Mulder, predictably intrigued, begs to join, but Kirsch refuses, leaving Mulder behind to stew as Scully and the rookie agent fly out. The scene shifts to Alfred, who is once again shadowing a man in a hat. In his eyes, the man appears in black and white, just like all his other future victims. The man grows anxious under Alfred's gaze, clutches his chest, and collapses. Calmly, Alfred approaches and snaps a few photos of the dying man's final moments. Meanwhile, Scully and the rookie agent arrive at the archives to dig into Alfred's background. What they find stuns them. Alfred's appearance hasn't changed in the slightest from 1964 to 1998, 34 years without aging a day. Even Scully, ever the skeptic and scientist, is left without a logical explanation. That same night, a young man out for a walk in his brand new sneakers catches the eye of a thug. The thug kills him on the spot and steals the shoes. As he looks up, he sees Alfred quietly photographing the scene and bolts in panic. But Alfred isn't fazed. He kneels beside the body, ready to take close-ups, unaware the thug is lurking behind him. The killer stabs Alfred several times in the back, leaves the murder weapon lodged in his body, and flees with Alfred's camera. You'd think that would be the end of Alfred, but somehow he pulls the knife from his back and shakily rises to his feet, alive. The next morning, Scully and the rookie agent arrive on the scene, finding the young man's body and the discarded weapon. With Alfred's fingerprints on the knife, he's quickly brought in for questioning. Alfred claims he was taking photos when he witnessed the murder, but omits any mention of being stabbed. He lies, saying he accidentally touched the knife afterward, which explains the fingerprints. Scully isn't convinced. She found a second blood trail at the scene and suspects it's Alfred's. After removing his shirt, she finds several stab wounds, but they are already healing. With insufficient evidence and 2 distinct sets of prints on the knife, Alfred is released. Later, Scully calls Mulder to update him. Mulder still believes Alfred might be the killer and is eager to join the investigation, but Scully insists she has it under control. That evening, she visits Alfred's home. Confronting him, she demands to know how he always manages to be first at the scene of a death. Faced with her persistence, Alfred gives in. He takes her along for a midnight drive, hunting for his next subject. An hour later, he pulls the car over and points to a woman on the sidewalk. He says the woman's going to die soon, calmly preparing his camera. Scully is skeptical until a thug approaches the woman and begins harassing her. As the situation escalates, Scully steps in, trying to help. The woman refuses to give a police statement and insists on going home. But just as she steps into the street, she's hit and killed by a speeding truck. Alfred can predict death, but not how it happens. Still, Scully is shaken. The rookie agent later informs Scully that the man who stabbed Alfred has been caught, but the suspect is now trying to pin the murder on Alfred. Scully defends Alfred, arguing that while he isn't a killer, he's guilty of standing by and doing nothing. The rookie agent doesn't care, he just wants to close the case. He even threatens to report Scully to Skinner if she gets in his way. Scully has no interest in entertaining the rookie agent's threats. She sees him for what he is. Just then, Mulder calls. Though sidelined from the investigation, he's been digging into historical records. According to old documents, Alfred has changed identities multiple times. The earliest record ties him to a man born in 1849, which would make him at least 149 years old. Scully, now more intrigued than ever, returns to Alfred's home to warn him that the rookie agent plans to arrest him soon. While she still doesn't believe Alfred is a murderer, she holds him responsible for failing to prevent countless deaths. Alfred calmly responds, "Death is a blessing, and those people were simply taken by the Reaper." He says he once even captured the Grim Reaper's shadow in a photograph. Scully scoffs, arguing that what he saw was just an exposure artifact. But Alfred insists otherwise. He claims he cannot die. He's tried slitting his wrists, poisoning himself, jumping off bridges. Nothing works. He believes he's been cursed, abandoned, and no longer belongs in this world. Scully notices a signature on one of Alfred's photos, Louis Brady, 1928. Quietly, she passes the name on to Mulder for further investigation. Unbeknownst to her, Alfred overhears the call from inside the house. Later, he steals Scully's phone and hides it. Meanwhile, Mulder heads to the archives and digs up records under the name Louis Brady. He discovers that Alfred, under that alias, was accused of suffocating 2 patients in a Connecticut hospital in 1929, before vanishing without a trace. Alarmed, Mulder fears Scully might be in danger. He immediately alerts the rookie agent and packs his things to head to New York himself. Completely unaware of this, Scully is still having a heart-to-heart with Alfred, but suddenly she appears in black and white to him, just like all the others who are about to die. Alfred says nothing. He quietly prepares his camera, ready to document Scully's final moments. He begins to recount a story from many years ago. During a yellow fever outbreak that claimed half of New York City, Alfred himself became infected. Lying in a hospital bed, waiting to die, he caught a glimpse of the Grim Reaper. He dared not look directly at its face. As it passed, it seemed to claim a nurse instead of him. When Alfred awoke, he was completely cured. From that moment on, he realized he could not die and that the nurse had died in his place. Now, he tells Scully, it's her turn. The Reaper is coming for her. Terrified, Scully refuses to believe it and wants no part of being photographed in her final moments. She handcuffs Alfred and attempts to call for backup, only to discover her phone is missing, stolen by Alfred. Just then, the rookie agent bursts through the door. Alfred, thinking the Reaper has arrived, raises his camera. The rookie agent fires. The bullet shatters the camera lens, but incredibly, it passes through Alfred's body and hits Scully instead. She collapses. The rookie agent panics and runs off to get help. Alfred retrieves his damaged camera and approaches Scully, intending to take one last picture. But something changes in him. Instead, he gently tells her to close her eyes and not look at the Reaper. He clasps her hand. As he does, color returns to Scully's face, while Alfred fades into black and white. He looks up and meets Death's gaze directly. And just like that, Alfred takes her place. He dies so Scully can live. The rookie agent nearly loses his job over the incident. Later, Mulder tells Scully she's recovering well and offers this thought. The more you cling to life, the more death comes looking for you. Maybe it's a warning against holding on too tightly to anything. In this story, Alfred was a man removed from death's list. Scully's belief that Alfred wasn't a killer might not have been entirely accurate. In his eyes, death was a blessing, so even taking a life may not have felt like a crime. In 1929, under the alias Louis Brady, he was accused of suffocating 2 hospital patients. years. After Scully discovered that name, Alfred hid her phone, possibly to cut her off from outside help, suggesting he had considered killing her too. For years, he chased death, trying to capture the Reaper's face, but he never succeeded. Perhaps in his desperation, he thought causing death himself would finally lure the Reaper close enough to meet it. But when he saw Scully turn black and white, he may have realized he wouldn't have to act. Death was already coming for her. The scene shifts to a train car where several doctors perform a surgery. They cut open the subject's body and see green blood oozing from the wound, which quickly heals on its own. They immediately report this to a leading scientist in the organization, announcing that after years of research, their human-alien hybrid experiment has finally succeeded. The doctors plan to celebrate after finishing up, but as soon as they step off the train, they are ambushed by the alien rebels. Armed and merciless, they burn the scientists alive, but leave the hybrid specimen on the operating table untouched. The camera zooms in on the one successful subject, Spender's mother, Cassandra. She was abducted by a UFO a year ago and handed over to the organization for alien hybrid experiments. The next day, the FBI rushes to the scene. Spender's mother, missing for a year, is alive and well. As a human-alien hybrid, her self-healing abilities are extraordinary. Spender is overjoyed to reunite with his mother, but she immediately asks to see Mulder. For her sake, Spender swallows his pride and approaches his longtime rival, Mulder. Spender wants to know what his mother has endured over the past year, but he still refuses to believe in extraterrestrial life. The scene shifts to the smoking man visiting a critically injured scientist in the hospital. The scientist reveals that he was supposed to kill Cassandra as per their agreement, but the alien rebels arrived and stopped them. Fearing the FBI will interrogate the leading scientist and expose the organization, the smoking man cuts off his oxygen supply. The smoking man suspects the alien rebels left Cassandra alive to expose the organization's dark deeds. Soon, the alien rebels take the form of the deceased leading scientist, assassinate another core member of the organization, and assume his identity. It seems the rebels plan to bring down the organization from within. Cut to Scully visiting Cassandra at the hospital. Cassandra is now able to walk. Scully brings her to meet Mulder. Cassandra reveals that during her abduction, she saw Mulder's sister, missing for over 20 years. She confirms aliens are real and hostile. They have long planned to invade Earth and annihilate humanity. Their weapon is the black oil virus, a form of their existence. To resist the black oil virus, the alien rebels disfigured themselves and became the Faceless Men. Cassandra's ex-husband, the Smoking Man, is a puppet of the aliens, and his secret organization has been serving their agenda all along. The scene switches to a meeting of the organization's leadership. Since the Roswell incident, they have maintained a covert agreement with the aliens. But now an alien rebel has unexpectedly appeared and destroyed their research base in Mexico, causing division over how to respond. Mulder and Scully sneak into Spender's office and pull up files on the Smoking Man, whose real name is revealed as CGB. Mulder and Scully are careful not to let Spender find out. Spender reports this breach to his superiors, and both Mulder and Scully are suspended. Spender meets with his father, the Smoking Man. Until now, he has blindly obeyed him, never truly understanding what the organization does. When he learns his mother's abduction is connected to the Smoking Man, he is furious. A heated argument erupts between father and son. The Smoking Man supports Spender only to suppress Mulder, but it's clear Spender is no match for Mulder. Scully couldn't find any records on the Smoking Man, but uncovers an old photo showing him alongside Mulder's father. Mulder learns that the Smoking Man's ex-wife, Cassandra, was abducted over 20 years ago, the very day Mulder's sister disappeared. In short, Mulder's father and the Smoking Man were once partners. One lost his wife, the other lost his daughter. The Smoking Man knows the alien rebels use disguise technology to infiltrate the organization. He gives Spender a weapon capable of killing aliens and sends Alex to help him eliminate the impostor. But Spender bungles the mission. He fails to stab the alien rebel in the back of the head and nearly gets killed himself. Fortunately, Alex arrives just in time and plunges an ice pick into the rebel's skull, saving Spender. Staring at the dissolving corpse, Spender finally believes in the existence of aliens. Alex confided in Spender that his mother had been deliberately handed over as a test subject by the Smoking Man. It was part of a plan involving cooperation with aliens. Spender didn't fully understand the entire plan, but he made it clear that he would never participate in it. The Smoking Man trusted no one and vaguely sensed that his son might betray him. So, he summoned a trusted associate and shared the details of their organization's collaboration with the aliens, hoping the associate would help eliminate any obstacles to the plan. That trusted associate turned out to be Mulder's ex-girlfriend, Diana. Meanwhile, Mulder met with Skinner at home and pieced together the general picture. 50 years ago, the Smoking Man's secret organization reached an agreement with aliens to breed human-alien hybrids. Once the hybrids were successfully created, the aliens would begin a colonization campaign, exterminating humans and taking over Earth. In return, members of the organization and their families would be allowed to survive after colonization. Spender's mother was one of the successfully bred hybrids. However, the members of the organization were now divided over whether to hand Cassandra over to the aliens, with some even suggesting she be killed. Spender went to the hospital to take his mother away, only to find her missing. It turned out she had gone to find Mulder on her own. Cassandra appeared extremely panicked, insisting that the secret organization must not be allowed to find her, because once they handed her over to the aliens, the colonization would begin. She begged Mulder to kill her. At that moment, there was a frantic knock on the door. At Cassandra's request, Mulder raised his gun toward her. In the story, the Roswell event is framed as the beginning of alien contact with Earth. From that point on, the organization entered into a cooperative agreement with the aliens to study and develop hybrids. Knowing they couldn't resist the alien colonization, they chose to collaborate to ensure the survival of themselves and their families. Another motive behind their cooperation was to buy time, to secretly develop a vaccine against the alien black oil virus. The sudden emergence of a rebel faction caused turmoil within the organization. These rebels not only resisted the aliens, but also intended to eliminate the organization itself. In order to protect itself, the organization decided to hand over Spender's mother to the aliens and allow the colonization to begin. This is why Spender's mother was so desperate and insisted that Mulder kill her. Mulder raised his gun at Cassandra. Just then, a group of hazmat-suited agents burst through the door, forcing the three people inside to the ground and sealing off the house for decontamination. Leading the team was none other than Mulder's ex-girlfriend, Diana. She claimed that Cassandra was carrying an unidentified contagious disease and forced Mulder and Scully into quarantine and decontamination. Her explanation was that Cassandra carried a high-risk pathogen capable of causing spontaneous combustion in anyone who had come into contact with her. It was clear she was trying to pin the deaths of the doctors who were burned alive on Cassandra. As an agent of the secret organization, her real intent was to abduct Cassandra and hand her over to the group. Scully had long seen through Diana's true color and couldn't hold back. She confronted her directly, but to her surprise, Mulder told Scully to stop. In his eyes, his ex was as pure as a white lotus. Because their original clothes had been destroyed, Mulder had to put on an ill-fitting outfit. Complaining about the small shoes, he went to find a staff member to swap them. That's when he saw a strange figure and quickly gave chase, only to discover it was the UN assistant. In the previous season, she had been infected with the black oil virus and imprisoned by the secret organization for various human experiments. Once strikingly handsome, she had been tortured to the point of becoming unrecognizable. The UN assistant revealed to Mulder all the details she knew about the alien hybrid experiments and the colonization plan. Meanwhile, several members of the organization were discussing how to survive the rebels' attacks. Some believed they should kill Cassandra and defect to the alien rebels, but the smoking man insisted on handing Cassandra over to the aliens to initiate colonization in exchange for their own survival. Spender visited the quarantine center and saw his imprisoned mother. For the sake of his mother and humanity's future, he made the decision to betray the smoking man. Scully, with help from the lone gunman, investigated Diana's background. Scully and several other women had once been abducted by the secret organization for alien hybrid experiments, and the one responsible for gathering the victims' information was Diana. She had long been monitoring the results of the experiments on behalf of the organization. Scully claimed she was placed close to Mulder by the group specifically to prevent him and Scully from interfering with their plans. However, Mulder didn't believe Scully's findings. He trusted Diana unconditionally, which infuriated Scully to the point of nearly breaking ties with him. Mulder claimed not to believe Scully's findings, but his actions betrayed him. He secretly went to Diana's house to search for evidence, only to run into the smoking man who had come to see her. Mulder chastised the smoking man for his selfishness, accusing him of sacrificing all of humanity just to save himself. The smoking man explained that their organization was originally founded by the State Department. After the 1947 Roswell incident, they broke away from the government to become an independent entity. Mulder's father was also a member of this organization. In order to delay the alien colonization, the organization had voted to collaborate with the aliens. The aliens agreed to cooperate under one condition. Each member of the organization had to select one family member to become a test subject. The smoking man chose his wife Cassandra, while Mulder's father chose his own daughter. When Mulder's father hesitated to hand over his daughter, the aliens themselves came to Mulder's house and abducted his sister. In return, the aliens provided their fetuses so the organization could extract DNA to create hybrids. The Smoking Man believed that hybrids had exceptional regenerative abilities and that only by making all of humanity hybrid could they survive the coming alien colonization. At the same time, they had been secretly working on a vaccine to resist the alien black oil virus, but it was now too late. The aliens had already discovered that the hybrid program had been successful and would soon release large swarms of bees carrying the black oil virus to infect humanity. With the alien rebels closing in, the Smoking Man had no choice but to surrender Cassandra, initiating the colonization plan early to ensure his own survival. Simply put, since they couldn't win the fight, he could only save himself, hoping that there might still be a chance for a future reversal. After explaining this, he handed Mulder an address. Spender went to the organization's base to look for his father, but Alex informed him that the organization had abandoned the place and taken his mother. Cassandra begged her ex-husband, the Smoking Man, to kill her, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Mulder stayed at Diana's house and said that after hearing the Smoking Man's explanation, he was beginning to understand why she worked for the organization. After all, when you can't win, you can only save yourself, hoping there might still be a chance for a comeback. The address the Smoking Man had left was for Elric Air Force Base, the aliens' long-standing base of operations on Earth. He hoped Diana would take him there. The scene shifts. An alien rebel, disguised via shape-shifting, infiltrates the quarantine center. He kills the researchers and steals the sample of the alien fetus. Spender arrives at the center looking for his mother, only to find she has already been taken away. There, he runs into the abandoned UN assistant, who tells him that Cassandra is being transported by train to Elric Air Force Base. Spender immediately passes this information to Scully. Mulder and Scully intercept the train carrying Cassandra. However, due to time constraints, they don't take her with them. Instead, they quickly get into the car with Skinner and head to Elric Air Force Base. In the end, Cassandra is still delivered to the base by the organization. Everything is now in place, except for the alien fetus sample. It is only at this point that Alex realizes the sample has already been stolen by the alien rebels. Now that the rebels have everything, it means the colonizing aliens are finished, and the secret organization is doomed too. The remaining Syndicate members, unaware of this, wait at the airbase with their families, still believing they will survive the alien colonization. What they don't realize is that the alien stronghold has already been taken over by the rebels. Diana arrives at the base and senses something is off. She quickly drives away with the Smoking Man. Then a group of faceless alien rebels emerges from the alien base. Even the workers who had transported Cassandra turn out to be rebel shapeshifters. The rebels encircle the Syndicate members and burn every one of them alive. And with that, the once mighty secret organization is utterly annihilated. It's all over. Mulder reflects that these people shared a bed with the enemy, only to be destroyed by a different set of enemies. Kirsch listens, still confused by the enormity of it all. Spender then requests that Mulder and Scully be reinstated and allowed to return to the X-Files. As he returns to his office to gather his things, he is shocked to find the Smoking Man already waiting for him. Staring at an old photo of himself and Mulder's father, the Smoking Man says he always envied Mulder's father for having a son to be proud of. Then, without hesitation, he shoots Spender dead. The Smoking Man hates betrayal, no matter who it comes from, even his own son. The Syndicate, whose scheme spanned 6 seasons, has now been wiped out. Perhaps now it's time to remember them by name. The alien rebels have won, and the colonization plan is effectively aborted. But the aliens' ambition to conquer Earth has not died. The fall of one enemy only signals the rise of another. The battle for Mulder and Scully is far from over. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.